Welcome to Earth Mysteries. Today we're off to Turkey, specifically to a place called Anatolia, and within Anatolia, Cappadocia. Cappadocia is a very fertile area, very old area, and has some really interesting formations. So you ready to go? Let's go. So here we are. This is Cappadocia. You can see this amazing landscape made up of what they call hoodoos or fairy chimneys that are made up of a volcanic material, unlike the Badlands of South Dakota that's made up of a sandstone or limestone. So this is much stronger. And it's so strong you can see that there are little doorways and windows in some of these chimneys because people are living within the chimneys. And even more extraordinary is there are whole cities underneath this rock. So what is amazing about this place? Well, here you have a hoodoo, a fairy chimney, just one of many that were left behind from volcanic activity millions of years ago. And originally there was a plateau, and then the wind and the rain eroded the surface and left these chimneys of a volcanic material known as tuff and a stronger basalt cap. And that is why they have withstood the test of time and probably many more earthquakes and many more volcanoes. And this area is very old. It was one of the first areas there where the ice retreated after the end of the Ice Age. And while everywhere else was covered in ice, this became a very fertile and advanced civilization. This is where you may have heard of Sumerians or Babylonians, but there were many civilizations even before them. And you can see from the map, it is now covering areas that we call Iraq or Iran or Israel or Palestine, Syria. All of that area is very ancient, and the edges of this was Turkey or Anatolia. And you can see that many people wanted to spend time in this place because of its richness. So there was a long time when the Hittite Empire ruled the area, and then the Greeks, and then the Romans, and then the Christians came, all taking advantage of the area. And finally, the Muslims came in 1071 AD, and that is still the case, that this area, Turkey, is a Muslim country. And there you can see the minarets in this particular town where we were staying. And even though you may feel that the houses are a little higgledy-piggledy, there is a rich energy. I wonder if you can feel that coming off the land. Because there's no doubt that this land is still very fertile. As we crossed from Greece to Turkey, you could almost feel there was a different energy. It almost felt that this was a female energy. And it's very interesting that on their flag is the moon. It's one of the few places where they still have a lunar calendar. And nearly everybody we met had a little piece of land where they grew vegetables or fruit or had animals. It felt that people here were much closer to their land than they were in Greece. And we were lucky enough to stay in this wonderful cave hotel. And when we arrived, we were welcomed, even though it was late at night. There was food for us, there was beautiful soup for us, and they told us as soon as we arrived, you are now our family. And that was what we felt wherever we traveled in Turkey. The way was to say, if you are staying in our home or you're in our village, you're now part of the family, and we must feed you, we must take care of you. That is our belief system. And so as you see on the picture on the right, this was our bedroom. It was actually carved out from the rock. It was a cave, a womb, very thick walls. But what was rich for us was these wonderful Turkish carpets on the floors. There were Turkish carpets on the walls. The bed was covered by this amazing embroidery. These gifts, it felt like everything was alive, everything had come from the earth. And we did get the chance to go and see that even today, many of the colors that they use in their carpets, in their bedding are still natural colors and still using things that are natural. The food there was amazing. And yes, apart from the cock waking us up a little early, it was a great place to be, and the people were just so friendly. And when we went for walks, we saw not only that, of course, that on our tables we could see every type of fruit and nut, but we actually saw that's where they were grown. And I don't think I've ever been anywhere where someone said, well, there's a walnut tree, there's a pecan tree, there's an apricot tree. It's like everything was there. And then everything was harvested by literally putting these out into the sun. And I suddenly saw why they are called sun-dried fruit, because literally they were sun-dried. I would believe that many of the fruits and vegetables that we see that are sun-dried or dried come from this area, because the soil is so naturally rich, because it is this old volcanic soil. And as I said, many of the houses were built into these chimneys, into these fairy chimneys, and it was delightful to see how this had stood the test of time. And we went to one place which was actually a little more modern, you may say, 10th or 11th century AD, but it was the Gorham Open Air Museum, which had originally been a monastic complex. And here, looking down on it, you felt that you were going down into a monastery, you were going down into an area where people had worshipped and prayed for such a long time. And just before we went into this place, we looked up and we saw all of these wonderful balloons. And it just showed there was a sort of above and below happening at the same time. So here's Leland, my lovely husband, as we were going down. And here we were almost given too much opportunity to say, shall we go and explore over there or explore over here? And that's me looking out and just wondering what it would have been like to be in this monastery, wondering if there'd been women there or had this just been for men. And as you can see, it was a huge complex. So we chose to go and explore some of these places. The stairs that were there still. You can see little arches. And of course, I found the place where they'd made wine. There was a lot of different places we went to where wine making was important. And you might wonder why there's the dip in the middle. That was where they literally trod the wine and then it collected in that trough in the side on the right side. But on the left side, they basically would sit, that was their table. So it was a stone table, you'd sit on the ledge, you put your feet in, that's where you would eat. And then the wine would come from next door. And there were still many Christian symbols around, but as you might see, most of their faces had been defaced, or eyes had been poked out because of the Muslim rule. And it is often said that if the eyes were taken, then the soul could no longer exist there, or the religion was taken. Many different places I've been where it has been the faces that have been taken away to literally get rid of the evidence or the power of a religion. So let's move underground to a city called Kaimarki. And this was an amazing place to go. It had been used from Hittite times, so we're talking about thousands of years ago, to hide from marauding tribes. And the people had lived there for months. And the idea of going underground when there was enemies around, I don't think any of us would think was strange. But the fact you would stay there for months was a little strange. And what they had managed to do was to create a whole city with all their needs met. Yes, there were places for their animals. Yes, they still did have some crops and they knew how to get their water, but they knew how to get the water from wells, so they dug down to make those wells. They'd also found places where they could make sure that the sewerage went in a different place than the well. The master builders and architects were amazing. There were places like you can see passageways in the center, they'd put steps in, but also up on the right-hand side, there were sleeping spaces, and you could also see how they had hung hammocks from the roofs so that the babies would not be attacked by rats, which were obviously also inhabiting these caves. There were 8 levels to this underground city, and they had kitchens, wineries, stables, churches, and, as I say, sleeping areas. Just amazing. Clearly the lights were not there at that time, or the electric lights, so they were having to use candles. But I have to say there wasn't a great deal of evidence of burning or soot. Somehow they managed to move the energy and move the air. There's another evidence of these high beds, and they also had ventilation shafts. They worked out how they could bring air in and obviously pass stale air out without allowing the enemy to block these shafts. So even though that looks like a very solid round shaft there, it often branched out into much smaller shafts so that that could appear across the earth and nobody would know it was coming from this one place. They also built these stone doors, so there would also be a place where you could come down, an entry point into this place, into these caves, but it would be curving, so that if someone was trying to come down with a sword, they would have to lay their sword aside because they couldn't get round the curve, and that would be a time where you could attack them. Then at the bottom would be a stone door which couldn't be moved from the shaft that they were coming down, only could be moved from inside. The ingenuity was amazing. It's thought that this andesite stone was used to create copper implements. That's the feeling that they got from the amount of wear and tear that this stone had had. And we were lucky enough when we were down here to see a few orbs, thinking that probably, yes, most of this place was empty, but maybe the spirits still like to visit at certain times. And you can see the magic of these orbs inside this space. And finally, our final part, our final day of staying here, was to actually see the whirling dervishes, which was one of the highlights of the trip. These men spent hours training in the whirling to be able to hold their focus and obviously not fall over, which I know I would do if I started to try and do this, and to actually empty themselves so that they weren't trying to focus on anything else but being in their center and being with their God. And we met several of them, and they would tell us that they practiced this, but they also had full-time jobs. Maybe they were electricians or they were builders. So it was very interesting that this was both a work life where they actually lived as if they were a whirling dervish. In other words, in glory to God. So whatever else they were doing, their passion and their religion was first and foremost. Their dedication. So here we are, we were in this beautiful cave hotel, and opposite with more caves, and our hotel hosts had lit up these caves, and out came these beautiful white figures that were lit up because of the ability to show us this beautiful experience. And here you see them in action, this amazing whirling. I just let you see them and feel the energy. Felt like a bliss experience in its own way. And after the show, we got the chance to meet one gentleman who was an electrician, as I say, but there was something just amazing about his eyes. It was impossible to see the pupils of his eyes or the color of his eyes because of the light that was shining out. This was not just due to a camera. Whatever we did, we could not see beyond the glare of his eyes. And we knew we were in the presence of someone extraordinary and very special. So that's our trip to Cappadocia. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed taking you there. Enjoy the pleasure of being in this unique place where the earth is so fertile, the people are so kind, and there is truly a feeling that this is heaven on earth. Until next time.